Welcome to this week's One Image My Edit. Now this week I'm going to be showing you how to make a image a little bit more moody. I'm calling this Moody Morning. I'm going back again to some of the previous One Image My Edits that I've done recently, and I've been exploring a lot of different ways of how we can create more mood and an atmosphere to a shot, and I think this is a perfect example. Now, just to note that to get this effect, you need to be shooting in a very kind of foggy, misty morning shot. Otherwise, it just won't work because of the colours and things that we're doing to it. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through how to do this. It's fairly simple, yeah. So let's make a start. So I'm going to get rid of that before and after, and just press reset, and then walk you through the process. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is drop the color temperature down a little bit. So I'm going to put that down to about -4, -5, just to take off and just to add a little bit more blue, add a little bit of tint to it, just to go towards more that sort of pinkish reddish look. I reckon about there. So it's just a real fine adjustment of that. I'm going to bring the exposure down a little bit as well, just because again I want to create this moody look. So for me, when images are slightly darker, that's what it does. It generates, and we can always come back and tweak this after. I'm going to make this a really contrasting image as well, so I'm going to boost this right up. I'm going to go to about 80, something like that to start with, and again I'll come back and adjust these in a bit if I need to. So the highlights, again, going to bring this down to about -20, something like that, just bringing them highlights down. And the shadows, I want to bring some detail back out into them shadows. I'm going to push this quite high, I reckon to around 88, something like that, so we can just start to see more detail around the shadowed areas around there. So I'm just going to put this a bit bigger for you so you can see. And then the whites, I'm going to make sure that them whites are suppressed. So I'm going to push that quite far. Again, we can always come back to this, but going with that moody look, we need to kind of start suppressing these. And the blacks, I'm going to bring them back up, because even though we've darkened the image, we still need to have some detail in them areas there. Otherwise it would just become too dark and it would look like more like a silhouette rather than a moody image. So if you look at the basics panel, you can see the kind of the edit. So it's the highlights are down, shadows are up, whites are down, blacks are up. Okay, so that's always a good starting point for when you're wanting to make moody and dramatic images. I'm going to bring the texture down a little bit, because I think by doing that it will just help soften the image. So around 15, something like that. And I'm actually going to push the clarity up quite a bit. I'm going to do that because I want these branches, these twigs, just to stick out a little bit more, and that will just help separate these from the background and the mood that we've kind of created. And then if we look at the dehaze, if we push that up, it'll obviously make it a lot more moody and darker. But if we go the other way, we're kind of now starting to add to that fog effect. Can you see what I mean? And that's what we want. It's just there, it's just helping to bind all of this together just by adding that. It gives us back our picture and just keeps everything all nice and neat because of just adding that dehaze. It's a very powerful tool. Now with the vibrance, I'm gonna push this up a little bit, because I do actually want this to be a fairly vibrant picture even though it's dark. Okay, and maybe then look at the saturation, just bring that down a little bit to around there. And again, we can come back to these and tweak these later. So now in the tone curve, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add pretty much an S curve, but I'm also going to suppress the blacks a little bit. So again, if you've been watching the videos, do 1, 2, 3, okay? And then up here is the highlights, so I'm just going to bring them down a little bit. Same with the mid-tones, going to bring them down a little bit just to suppress them. And then here I'm going to click and drag up, and this is going to give us this matte effect. So this is the black area, and we could maybe bring that in a little bit, just down, just to add a little bit more black back to the shot. So we've got quite a steady but harsh curve line there. We can just bring these highlights down a little bit more maybe. But depending on your image, it will vary. So you want this kind of this harsh effect here. So the majority of the edit is going to be around the colors, because we've kind of now, if we look at just what we've done, we've kind of we've darkened the image, but we've started to bring out this blue sort of tone here, which is it's going to give it a little bit more mood, but we need to kind of try and correct it a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start in the hues. I'm going to leave the reds and orange for now. The yellows, I'm going to boost that up to around 80, something like that, 87, 88, around there. Same with the greens. I'm going to start bringing the greens up. So what we're doing is we're making these greens more of an aqua color. Okay, so again, depending on your image, this will vary. So around 80, something like that. So we've pushed the yellows and the greens up. So the yellows have more of a green feel and the greens have more of an aqua feel. Okay, and to help that along, it's going to push the aqua up to around 17, something like that. And then we're going to do the same with the blues. We're going to push them into the aqua range. So we're getting almost like a teal kind of look, so to speak. So around there. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to leave purple and magenta. It's just these kind of tones that I'm trying to work on at the minute. So the saturation, let's go to the yellows and boost these up to around 25, 26, 28, around that range. That looks good. And then the greens, so I'm going to push these up again, going towards that aqua vibe. So I reckon about 74, 75, around there. So you can see what I'm doing with this saturation. I'm actually bringing that color out, even though it's like this here, this comes into a different color, so you can change the greens to look more like aqua. With this, the saturation, it's how much of that the color is there. If I take it completely away, then no green will be in the image. Okay, so I'm just pushing that up. And the aqua, again, we've got quite a lot of that in the image, so I want to make sure that is present. So around 38, 39. And then the blues, I'm going to bring them down because I don't want this to be too overpowering with that blue, because it was quite garish before. If you look, if I go back a few steps, and there you can see how garish that blue was. So we've just sort of kind of addressed that. Okay, and then the luminance, and we look here, it's the brightness of the colors. So we can dictate how bright we want certain colors to be. So I'm going to push the oranges up. I don't think there's a lot of orange in there, but I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to push the yellows up as well to around 60, something like that. And same with the greens, I'm going to push them up. And the reason why I'm pushing these up is because of what I've done up here. So within the hues, I wanted them to kind of change colour. So now I'm giving them a chance to pop a little bit. That's what this is going to enable us to do. Okay. And then the aqua, I'm going to bring this down. I'll keep going to around 80, something like that. That's good. I'm going to bring the blues down. Again, this is just helping suppress everything so it's not too overpowering. Okay, and then I'm going to leave the purples and magentas because there just isn't any in there. Okay. So the next thing then is coming to the color grading. And what I'm going to start with is the highlights. Now you might see this as 3 panels like that, so you can work on individual, which I find a lot easier. So the highlights, I'm gonna add like a green effect, I think. So with the hue, I'm gonna go around, I would say maybe about there actually. So we're going more towards that teal look. So yeah, that's pretty good. And if I increase the saturation, I can get that higher up. So if we look at the numbers, you've got the hue, which is 180, and saturation, which is 150. So the hue is this part, and then the saturation is this part, moving back and forth. Okay, so I reckon around there is quite good. That works quite well. It's starting to look a little bit more dramatic. And then in the midtones, let's have a look at this. So I reckon a hue, so kind of color, I think possibly around there. So we've got a kind of blue, and then saturation, I think I'm going to keep that quite low, so around 12, something like that. So let's just yeah, I reckon around there. So we've got a nice blue, but it's just a hint of blue because there is a lot of blue in that shot. Okay, and then the shadows. So you might actually start the other way. I've gone backwards. The shadows again. Let's have a look. I think another blue, and then maybe just a little bit more saturation because we know we're adding it to the shadows. We can. So I reckon around there. That will just give us that cinematic look. Okay. So if we look at that, you can see there we've actually messed around with them colours and just got a little bit more mood and a little bit more drama, and it's quite easy because most of it is done within the hue, saturation and luminance. So you're just playing around with colour. Now if you wanted to, you could add a little bit of grain to your image. You could certainly do that. If you come down to here where it says effect, you can add grain. That will certainly add drama to the shot, but this I'm going to keep it clean because I actually quite like the clean look. Now we've kind of done the majority of the work. We can come back up to here and just tweak these now, so we can just do that by eye and just see, you know, there we go. So maybe adding a little bit more of reducing that shadow, and the same with the black, so we can kind of look, you know, do we want that a little bit darker, and the whites as well, so we can just tweak them. Okay. And then coming back to here as well, this is always a good idea to come back to the curve tool once you've messed around, and just tweak it and just see what you can do, because look, these blacks are playing a major role here. So maybe if we bring them down a little bit, that will just be slightly moodier and slightly darker, and then we can just push that up a little bit. And then the exposure, again, the overall exposure is the effect. So we can, you know, you may prefer to lighten yours ever so slightly, or you can go a little bit darker. It really depends on personal preference. There's no right or wrong with that. But I think just tweaking it is well worth the effort. So there we go, around there. Okay, so that's how you do it. That's how you create this kind of, I'm calling it moody morning. It's quite nice. Maybe too much blue in this particular shot. So we could certainly address that with the color balance, but the white balance rather. So if you look for push that up, it kind of it just flattens everything that we just done out. So, you know, this is showing you that white balance is really, really important. And it's an integral part in your color grading. So, you know, if we look, we've got the tint in there with a little bit towards that pink, magenta kind of style. So we could bring that down and go more towards the green, and then maybe bring that further down. It's going to make it look darker. So you need to kind of experiment and play with what you prefer and what you like. Personally, I think it looks good, sort of with a little bit of tint towards that pink rather than a green, because we addressed them particular colors in here. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. Have a play, see what you can do, yeah, like I said, this only really will work on a moody image to start with, something like this where you've got lots of fog and mist, but it gives you the opportunity to really play down the whole image and just create something that's a little bit more creative and a little bit more artistic, and you can just continue to fine-tune it to however you want. So yeah, I think because that blue is bothering me a little bit, I would just maybe just bring that down a little bit there. So we're leaning more towards letting the other colors come through. So something like that I think would be pretty good. Okay, so I hope that's helped. I hope you enjoyed that. I look forward to seeing your attempts at this. Have a play and have a mess around, and like I said, just study these colors, because they're all moved in these positions. You can see the patterns that are starting to occur here. Okay, so look at them, tweak them, and certainly go back to the tone curve, and then certainly go back to your basics panel and then the color temperature just to finish it off. So I'll see you soon. Take care.